So I want to welcome everybody here. This is our weekly webinar series, but it's also the start of a new series, which is kind of a redo, a revamping of what I did a couple years ago, which is how do you look at your credit reports, find the errors, dispute so that stuff either gets fixed or deleted or it puts you in a position to sue. And we kind of started this last week with okay, how do you call a credit bureau after you get results of investigation? But this will sort of be the official start of it. And we'll go today and then we'll go next week. And that will be kind of the foundation. And then we'll just keep adding. You could think of it as parts or modules where we'll talk about identity theft and mixed merged files where files get put together or after bankruptcy discharge. How do you prove damages? Let's say you're turned down for a mortgage or some other type of loan. How do you prove that? And what about inquiries? Do they have to have permission to pull your credit report? Can you sue over inquiries? What can you do? All those will be kind of separate sessions that we'll just continue to do week after week. So let me go ahead and share the slides here. And these will be certainly a part of the presentation, but the real heart will be when we go into the actual credit report. So as you can see here on the screen, this is fix, delete, or sue. So how do you look at your own credit report and figure out the errors? And let me make sure this is advancing. Okay, so yeah, I think most of you on here know me, but if you don't know me, why are you here? Why should you listen to me about this? And I've just put a couple thoughts on the screen. One, I teach lawyers around the country how to do this sort of stuff. And I've been doing that for a long time. And I've been filing lawsuits for, I guess, about 20 years, maybe more than that now, under this particular law, the Fair Credit Reporting Act. And so I've been practicing in Alabama since 1995. So what is that, 28 years? A lot of that was, or I should say the first, 10 years was predominantly personal injury. We still do personal injury cases. If it's a big enough case, we'll do it. But starting in about 2000 or so, we started doing these consumer cases where we're helping people, mainly, folks I represent in personal injury cases who had problems with their credit reports. And so I've been doing that now for 20 plus years. And so what I want to share with you today is sort of our approach on how we look at credit reports. And we look at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of credit reports, and we file a lot of lawsuits. I won't name the company, but one particular company, I don't know, we've got probably 30 or 40 lawsuits that are sort of in the pipeline to file. And so this is not something that, I went to a weekend course and I haven't put any work into this is something that this is how I make my money, just to be blunt. And so we read opinions, we file lawsuits, we take deposition, all the things that happen in lawsuits. And so if you're still interested, then I hope you will stick around with us. And let me show you what we'll cover in really these two sessions, today and then next Thursday. I was going to do it tomorrow because I thought I was out of town next week, but I think I'll be back by Thursday. So we'll just do it this Thursday and next Thursday. And you can see on the screen, this is kind of the sequence, and hopefully it makes some sense. Well, first you got to pull your reports, and then you have to look for errors. You can't find the errors without looking at the reports. One time I broke my foot and I had to go to an orthopedic doctor, and he wanted to look at the x-rays before he gave me the treatment plan. Makes sense, right? You got to see, okay, is it broke? What kind of break is it? How bad's the break? Well, same thing here. We have to look at the credit reports in order to analyze the errors, to find the errors. And those are the two things we'll cover today. Now, we're not going to cover every error. We're not going to talk about what if you have a mixed merged file? What if you have identity theft? What if it's after bankruptcy type situation? Those we'll cover in different sessions. I just want to get kind of the basics down today. And then we'll talk about next Thursday, well, how do we send a very detailed, proper dispute letter, preferably through certified mail? And then we get those results of investigation back. What do we do? How do we read those? And then what we have added in the last several months is maybe longer than that. But anyway, here recently is we've added a phone call. to the credit bureaus. Okay, you did the results of investigation, you sent those to me. Now let's talk. And that's what we talked about last week. And if you don't have access to that, just let me know and I'll send you the replay link. And then we want to, even before we make that phone call, pull new reports just to make sure we understand what's on our report. And then we'll get, after the phone call, we'll get new results of investigation. We pull new reports, look again at what's happening. And then we've got a couple choices. I have listed here, sue if not corrected or deleted. Now, some people like to do another set of disputes. In a sense, the more disputes you do, the more value and strength your case has. Now, it's a diminishing returns, and you have to balance it with, well, how quickly do you want to actually get this thing fixed? Okay. Because if they're not going to fix it on the first dispute, the second dispute, it's unlikely they fix it on the third or fourth or fifth or 12th dispute. So, all right, let's look now at what we'll cover today. So we're talking about pulling your real reports, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. And then we want to analyze those for errors. All right, next Thursday, we'll do the things that are on the screen here. And I've kind of got them grouped together a little bit. You see, you send a detailed letter, you get results back, you pull new reports, you call, you get results back, you pull new reports, you sue, or you could dispute again if it's not corrected. And let's talk about what I see as the biggest danger. So I did I guess it was a 6-part series a year or two ago on this, and a good number of people went through it. Now, some people had just phenomenal success, and they reached out to me, hey, here's what's happened. Some of those folks I've ended up representing, and we filed lawsuits against the credit bureaus, and those have been successful. But what's the danger? And what I have on the screen is what I believe, if I narrow it down just one thing, is trying to shortcut the process. So somebody says, you know what? I don't want to go get my real reports. I'll just use Credit Karma. That'll be good enough. Or I'll use a credit monitoring service. That'll be good enough. Or I'll go to Equifax and I'll get Equifax, Experian, TransUnion all in one. Don't do that. Just follow the process. Don't try to shortcut it. For most of us, if we're trying to correct our credit reports, this has been a long-term thing. Okay. There have been errors on there for a year or 2 years or 5 years. And so if it takes an extra week or two to do it the right way, who cares? Do it the right way is my suggestion. So how do we make sure that we have success? I have 3 things up here on the screen. One is do the work. Again, there's no shortcut. Just do the work, okay? And I want to say this without sounding arrogant. Sometimes people will go through my material and they'll say, well, I just absolutely think there's a much better way to do it. You don't know what you're doing. I say, okay, well, how many credit bureaus have you sued? Well, none. Well, have you corrected your credit report? Well, no, I've been working on it for 5 years, but I'm just about to. Well, if what you're doing hasn't worked, or if you filed a lawsuit and were unsuccessful, maybe say, you know what, start with the beginner's mind and let's see what we come up with. Now, one thing I want to mention is, as we go through this process, I would love to hear feedback from you guys. Just email me. You get an email with the link to this webinar. Just reply back and say, hey, here's something that maybe you've missed, or here's something that I figured out. And that's wonderful. Okay, let's do that because we can all get smarter together. And I've mentioned this before. Warren's on here, Warren Maxwell, he showed me something, and I don't know if Warren invented this or not, but it's certainly who I saw it from first, and that is to mark up your credit report. And when I saw that he had done it, I thought that's a brilliant idea. So I started doing it. My point is we can all learn from each other. And, when you present ideas to me, I'm approaching it with the beginner's mind, not saying, well, I've been suing the credit bureaus for 20 years. I don't need to. No, I want to hear it because it may be something I haven't thought about, maybe a better way of doing things. And I suggest you do the same thing. So do the work, be very precise. Okay. This is not the time when we're doing disputes to just go, I think I looked at my reports like a week ago, and I think probably maybe perhaps, if the moon and the sun and Mars and Venus are in the right alignment, maybe this is what happened. No, be really, really precise. We're going to be critical of the credit bureaus for not being precise, not being accurate, not being complete. So we need to be accurate. We need to be complete. We need to be precise. And then persistence. right now, as I'm recording this, and obviously this is live for those of you on here, Experian is back to their old tricks of, basically every letter that comes to them, they send you an email if you're signed up with Experian, or they send you a letter like, we received a suspicious package and pretending to be from you. And to do you a favor, we're not going to investigate it. Well, I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to figure out why they're doing this. So do we just, this just doesn't work? Or do we go, you know what? Let's be persistent. Maybe we have to make a phone call. Maybe we have to send stuff again to them. My point is, if it's worth doing, then it's worth doing it, first of all, poorly at first, right? While we learn it. And then it's worth doing it with persistence and being just sort of dogged determination. All right, so let's talk about your real reports, and I'll show you on the next slide what I'm talking about. But understand this, data is your friend, okay? And this is not, for Star Trek Next Generation. This is the data in your credit reports. That is your friend, okay? Each piece of data can be critically important. And when we look at the most amount of data, then we'll get the most accurate, the most complete picture of our credit report. And oftentimes when we do that, we realize, wow, there are all sorts of holes in there and missing things and contradictory things. But see, if we go get a credit monitoring, for example, maybe it only goes back 2 years. Well, instead of going back 7 years, we go back 2 years. We've just shortchanged ourselves 5 years, 60 months, 60 months. There's no reason to do that. Get the most amount of data, and then we've got to make sure that data is accurate. So I've shared this story before, and this is something we've known for many, many years. We're starting to see judges, rule this way, where people will come into a lawsuit and they'll say, you did false credit reporting, and the bureau goes, no, we didn't. They go, yeah. Here's my Credit Karma. And the credit bureau looks at the judge. We have no idea what that stuff is. That's not our data. And the person's like, well, it has to be. It's Credit Karma. It says Equifax on here. And they're like, not our data. Well, same thing. If you go buy from Equifax a 3-in-1, you get Experian and TransUnion. Guess what? Experian and TransUnion are going to say, that's not our data. You get that from Equifax. And you can tell when you get these 3-in-1, they change the data, certainly change the format of it. They leave information out. It's just the smart thing to do. If you want to fix your credit reports, if you want to correct errors, go get the real reports. Now, the beautiful thing is, well, let me back up. If you had to go through a ton of effort and even expense to get your real credit reports, it'd be worth it. But here's the beautiful thing. It's free and it's pretty easy. Okay. We can even get our real credit reports through annualcreditreport.com once a week. Okay. And so it's free, it's easy, it's the best data. It's the only data that really matters. So why would we do anything else? I'm not saying credit monitoring has no value. I'm not saying Credit Karma has no value. I'm saying that if you want to know exactly what's on your actual reports, go get them directly from the source. And you do that through annualcreditreport.com, or you have the bureaus mail you direct in the mail your credit report. It's just easier to sort of handle the data if you have it online from annualcreditreport.com. So let's look at the two places. So I've got annualcreditreport.com. That's Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. And then even though we're not going to really do anything with this for a few weeks, go ahead and request your Clarity report. So Clarity is owned by Experian. So you can think of it this way. You have Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, and then they've all gone out and bought these subprime credit bureaus. So Experian bought Clarity, TransUnion bought Factor Trust, Equifax bought DataX. And these are all bureaus that are out there that more cater to online loans, payday loans, tribal loans. And they're also just kind of marketing things. Okay. And out of the three of those, so Clarity, DataX, and Factor Trust, the easiest to pull, because you can pull it online, is Clarity. Now you can request your other two to be mailed to you, and that's great. But I would say if you would start with these four, so get Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, and get Clarity. Okay. Let's see. This is something, again, I learned this from Warren Maxwell. So you definitely want to save your original. So if that's a paper copy, okay, then you want to make a photocopy of it or scan it in. If it's a PDF, just make sure you have your original and then just do save as and put, working copy at the end of the, this is March the 9th Equifax report dash working copy. And that way you can go through and first pass sort of get rid of all the pages that don't matter, right? That are, the accounts are current, you're not going to dispute anything. Because Equifax may start off like 130 pages and you get it down to like 27 pages. And then you start marking that thing up. Now, you could use a pen, right? If it's on paper, you can, I'm not sure where my iPad is, but if you have an iPad or a tablet, you might have a little pencil thing. You can just use any type of PDF program. Now, not necessarily like a free reader, although you may have it on your computer, preview on the Mac or whatever's on the Windows. But you need something where you can sort of highlight things, circle things, draw arrows to things. And when you do that, you can really start to see the errors that are coming through. And let me mention this, and then I'll take a look at the comments, and then we'll jump into some actual credit reports. And I want to make it very, very interactive, where let's all together look at these reports and figure out what the errors are. All right, so we call this our 2x2 approach. So here's what I mean by that. We first look at an account and say, is there something inaccurate about it or incomplete? Okay, and I'll show you, even the credit bureaus admit in their letters to you or their credit reports to you that you can challenge those two things. And it's the law. That's why they have to admit it. So we look at those, and then that feeds into the next sort of criteria where we say, can we dispute it? Well, yeah, if there's inaccurate information or incomplete information, we can dispute it. But here's the question, should we dispute it? So let me give you sort of an extreme example. Let's say I have an account, a credit card that's 20 years old. And just assume credit scoring models typically give you a higher score the older your accounts are, the more age they have. So 20-year-old account's pretty good. And in that 20-year-old account, it's, a $50,000 credit limit. I have $1 balance on there. But 6 years, 8 months ago, I had a 30-day late. And say that that's incorrect. Well, if I challenge that, there's always a chance, and you have to acknowledge this before you challenge anything, that the credit bureau could just say, you know what, just delete the whole account. So in other words, you can say, I only want you to delete this 30-day late, but they have the option just to delete the whole account. Well, see, that would probably be unwise, right? I can dispute it, but I probably should not dispute it. So we look at an account, we find something that's inaccurate, incomplete. We say, okay, that means I can dispute, but should I dispute? And that's the analysis that we go through. And, I look at hundreds of credit reports a month, and I look through there and say, yep, that can be disputed. That can be disputed. You know what? But this one does not need to be disputed. You're better off just to leave that alone. All right. And then our last slide will just be, we're going to go through some credit reports. I've got 4 different examples. I'm not going to show you clarity because the primary thing with clarity is, if for every 100 people that watch this, about 5 of you will have a clarity report that's mixed up with somebody else. And so I just want you to get the report and start looking at it. And then if you find that it's a mixed or merged situation, just let me know and I'll walk you through the steps on that. And eventually we'll have a video on that. So what I would suggest to you is, to the extent you can, and I know some people may be driving, obviously don't do it if you're driving, but if you are able to look at what's on the screen, these credit reports, and then type into the chat, hey, I see this as an error, I see that as an error, it will help you learn. I mean, I could go through and, just bang these things out in, like 2 minutes and say, all right, here's the 117 errors, on this account and the 43 on this account. You're not really going to learn it that way. I really want you to think through and watch what other people say and then evaluate it. Go, I don't agree with that. Or, yeah, that's a great point. I agree with that. And it will really help you to learn. So let me look at the comments here. Let's see. We'll just run through these real quick and then we'll jump into the actual credit report. So Ryan says, Experian usually has a message on annual credit report. It says a condition exists prevents Experian from being able to accept your request at this time. We run into that some. And, sometimes if you sort of clear your browser history or maybe open up like an incognito or private browsing, sometimes that will help. Sometimes you just have to come back to it in a week, and you can always get it mailed to you. Now, I like it online because it's better and more easy to work with. And here we're mainly talking about clients. If it gets mailed to the client, they've got to scan it or mail it to me. So it's just easier if they can pull it directly and then email it to me. But yeah, we see this from time to time with really all of them, and it seems like it goes through cycles. Like we'll hit a week where Equifax is just terrible on annual credit report, then it's fine for 3 months, and then it'll be TransUnion, then it will be Experian. Let's see. Yeah, JD Lewis says he's having that problem with Experian and Equifax, and so he just calls them to mail a physical copy, and that's certainly a good approach there. And let's see, Derek says ad blocker can do that. Yeah, VPNs can cause a problem. Yeah, a lot of places will block you if you have a VPN because they don't want somebody sitting in some unnamed country, but yet they're pretending to be sitting in Miami or Dallas through ExpressVPN or whatever. So definitely take a look at that. And let's see, JD says Experian has this thing they started doing now where they refuse to take phone or online disputes. They say law states you must dispute with creditor, even though it's clearly not true. Anyone else have that issue? Yeah, so we've had some clients that have called Experian and they've gotten just terrible feedback from Experian. We can't take a dispute over the phone. That's a complete lie. You can dispute it by phone, dispute it by letter, dispute it online. And the key is to document all of your efforts. Okay. So it's pretty persuasive when you're standing in front of a judge and saying, they rejected my letter and said they thought it was suspicious, even though it had like my driver's license, my utility bill, pages from my credit reports, very detailed information. And then I called them and they said that they couldn't talk to me. And then I tried to do it online and it was down. At some point the judge is like, wow, sounds like you guys are just being jerks. And that would probably be pretty accurate there. All right, so let's look now at our first item here that I would like us to look at. And I was going to have it kind of like the slides were, but it would make it too small. So I've got it actually on another screen. So I'm going to be kind of looking off at this other screen to some extent. All right, so hopefully you can see my cursor there, my mouse. So this is in virtually every credit report, a summary of your rights. I just want you to see this. You have the right to dispute incomplete or inaccurate information. And then the credit bureaus must correct or delete inaccurate, incomplete, or unverifiable. Now, the reason it doesn't say unverifiable up here is verifiable is after you dispute it. I mean, you don't know whether it's verifiable or not till you dispute it, and then the credit bureau tries to verify it. So inaccurate or incomplete, or if they just go, we can't find the answer to this, or maybe the data furnisher has not responded, then they're supposed to delete it. So I just want you to see that this is the way that they're supposed to do things. So these are just credit reports that I just kind of grabbed at random, but I tried to pick some recent ones just so this is not like, oh, well, I had this one from 2 years ago, I had error. No, these are just like randomly this morning. I just went through. I mean, we've got tons of credit reports. Just let me look at that one. And there wasn't any that I sort of rejected. Okay. Every credit report I pulled had errors on it. So let's just look at this. And I've, blocked out the names and accounts and everything. So this is something we see this little summary here, charge off and a balance. And first I want to walk you through the way Equifax shows it on the online version, not necessarily if you go to myequifax.com, but if you get it through annualcreditreport.com, which is where I recommend you get it. You've got this account history. It's also called historical data or trended data, the different names for it. The idea is to see not just where are you right now in this moment in time, but are you doing this? Are you doing this? What's happening? So let me give you an example. Let's say I have a twin brother and we both have a Capital One account and both of us have a $10,000 balance, and our jobs are the same, our income's the same, everything about our credit's the same. So it would seem like, doesn't make a difference which one you loan to. But what if 5 months ago his account was at 50,000? And so over the last 5 months, it's done this all the way down to 10. And 5 months ago, my account was zero. And so over the last 5 months, it's done this. Well, I think all of us would look at that and say, well, if I'm lending money, I'd rather lend the money to the guy that's moving in the right direction, not the wrong direction. Well, that's what the trended data or historical data is all about. And the more sort of modern scoring models look at this, because you can't just take sort of a snapshot in time and say, oh yeah, we know what this guy's doing. You need to see, which way is he trending? Are the debts going down, going up? Is she paying stuff down? Is she charging stuff up? Like, what's going on? And so it's really important to have this trended data here. And so you can see and every bureau is different, but this is Equifax. They've got the balance, available credit. So that would be your credit limit minus your balance would be your available credit. Your scheduled payments, in other words, what are you scheduled to pay? How about the actual payment that you made? The high credit, that's going to be the highest amount that you achieved on that card, at least in that month. The credit limit, that's going to be, how much credit do you have? Now we have to minus out the balance to know what your available credit. And then here's the amount past due for each month. Activity designators, sometimes there'll be things in here and they'll always define what those are. And I'll show you an example here. What I suggest you do is actually start kind of at the bottom with Equifax, okay? Because, for example, looking at this trended data, how do we know whether the account's even open in 2022 or 2023? So we kind of need to look down here and say, okay, here's a balance and here's date reported February 26, 2023. Okay, this account's been around and it was open February of 21. And so then we just start looking at this and saying, all right, do we see any errors? And I'll give you just, I'll kind of start us off with one here. So look at the date of first delinquency. And Equifax and Clarity are the only ones that actually give you that. Date of first delinquency is the date you literally first went delinquent, for not Clarity because they do it weird, but for Equifax, when you first become 30 days late and then you never bring it current. So if I was 30 days late in December and 60 days in January, well, December would be my date of first delinquency. But if I bring it current in March, I no longer have a date of first delinquency. This says we have a date of first delinquency, November 2021. And about, I don't know, a third of the time, if you look, it will not match up with the payment history. So here's a payment history. And remember what they said, November 2021. So let's look at November 2020. Oh, that's weird, right? Paid on time. Well, how's it paid on time and a date of first delinquency? You see, even the next month, December, on time, the month before, on time. So that would be something we would make a note of. Maybe we'd circle one thing, draw an arrow, circle the date of first delinquency, circle this November 2021. And so that's an example of what we're looking for, something that is just flat out wrong, something that is inconsistent or just doesn't make sense. So here's another example. Look at this comment here. May 2021 charged off account. What do you see for May 2021? And just type it into the comments there if you can. And I know a lot of people may be where they can't type in, but those of you that are able to, it will help you to sort of participate in this and, just type in some comments. Yeah. So John says, look, if we go to May 2021, we got a green check mark. Well, we're pretty confident that's a good thing, right? But then we look down here and we go, oh, paid on time. Yeah, so everybody's putting this in the comment. So we go, well, that's weird. Now, maybe I was charged off in May of 2021, and then this is wrong. Or maybe this is right, and the charged off is wrong. Okay. But I would circle both of those things, draw a line. And here's sort of the mindset of this is, and we're not going to talk about the exactly how to put the letter together. We'll do that next week. You'll have a word template. But here's the mindset I want you to think about. We want to tell the credit bureaus what's wrong. We do that in writing. We type the letter, we identify the account. We don't just say something generic like, there are all sorts of errors, please investigate. That's worthless, okay? I mean, maybe it gets something deleted. That's just coincidence, all right? If you want to put yourself in a position where it gets fixed, it gets deleted, or you sue, then you spell out in detail. So you don't say, the comments don't reflect accurately the payment history. What does that even mean? You say, hey, in the comments, you say on 05/2021, it was a charged off account, but in the payment history in May 2021, you have a green check mark, which stands for paid on time. Please explain how you have both of these things, which are completely, utterly contradictory. See, now you've put that in front of them. Now the credit bureau has to go, all right, what are we going to do with this? Are we going to fix this, or are we just going to delete the account? What are we going to do? All right. So another thing to look at, kind of starting off, is the opening. And I mentioned this a moment ago, because you need to know how long the account's been open. And then we can come back up here and kind of start from the top and say, okay, if this account had been opened in January of 2023, we wouldn't expect there to be any data in 2021 or 2022, but it's actually open February of 2021. So look in the years 2021, 2022, and then 2023 for balance, and just type in what's missing from this. What doesn't look right to you about the balance? And we're under the kind of the heading of account history here. So remember, it was open in February of 21. And so if you were writing a letter, or imagine you're sitting across the table from Mr. Equifax, and he says, hey, what's wrong with this credit report? And you go, well, let's look at the account history. Let's look at the balance. And what would you tell him is wrong? Remembering things that are incomplete can be disputed. Things that are inaccurate can be disputed. And when you dispute inaccurate and incomplete items, the credit bureau must investigate those. Now, typically they reach out to the data furnisher, and the data furnisher has to investigate, but the credit bureau has to investigate also. So how would you word that to either in a letter, or if you're sitting across the table from, the president of Equifax? Yeah, so Bill says, all right, February, March, and November have no balance. Yeah, for 2021, you can go, where is it? There's no data for those months. And now it's real easy for 2022, right? There's no data at all for 2022. And then here we are in March as we're recording this, and we'd say, January, February, March of 23, where's the data? Okay. Now, maybe they have the data and they'll fix it. That's certainly allowable for them to do. Maybe they don't have the data, and now they'll have to decide what to do about that. So, same thing for the available credit. All right. Except there's nothing in the available credit. But remember, this is a credit card, and let's look at, so Blaine says, why is there no data in the available credit? It's a good question. So let's just look at this payment history and say, all right, when it goes to a charge off, there really should be zero credit limit. Okay. Now, I think they should still put zero there. But if we look at all of 2021, it's saying that we were current, we were on time. So there should be something here for the available credit. So we would just, again, if we were sitting across the table from the president of Equifax, and he crosses his arms and says, all right, Blaine, tell me what in the world is wrong with, the available credit under the section of account history. You say, well, starting February of 2021, all the way through December, and then 2022, 2023, all the way through March, where's the data? Like, what was my credit limit? You need to put that information in there. And that puts Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, whoever you're writing this to, puts them into a position where they have to investigate. And do you see the difference between this and sort of a generic thing where you say, I think there are inaccuracies with, Capital One, please investigate. That doesn't do anything. No federal judge goes, wow, I think you really like explained the errors to them and they really botched their investigation. I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say that's worthless. Make it very specific, very precise. Okay. And what I would do is I would circle these missing things. So we got February and March for the balance. We got November 21 missing, circle all of 2022, 2023, the first 3 months. And just go through and remember, we're doing show and tell, right? So we tell them in the letter, we'll do that next week. We're showing them now. We're circling stuff. We're highlighting it. Again, whether you do it physically and then you scan it in, or whether you do it on a PDF or, however you do it, it doesn't matter. Like just mark it, highlight it, do something to call attention to it. And then really be the same thing for scheduled payment, actual payment. Now you'll see there's no real rhyme or reason here. The high credit, they have April through October. The actual payment, they only have April through August. For credit limit, they have April through October, just like high credit, but then they have December. Why is that? They just have bad data. Okay. And this is why it's so important to get it directly from the source. If we were doing this off a credit monitoring service, and so, oh, look, your data is horrible, Equifax. They go, it's not our data. Here, it's their data. They own this data. And I mean that like they literally own it, but they also sort of metaphorically have to own this data and they have to own where it's missing. And so again, you can do the same thing with amount past due. And then we come back to these comments. These weren't particularly relevant. That's why I blocked them out. Let me look at our comments here. Let's see. I may have missed a comment earlier. Let's see. Paulette says, our credit bureau is supposed to give you a copy of results of investigation they say they conduct. Keep getting a response saying the things I dispute are accurate. How do they know what the creditor said is accurate? Yeah, so you're supposed to get results of investigation, which would be, you can think of it like a letter, but then it will have, different formats for different bureaus. But it will say, here's what we did. We verified everything. We modified these. We deleted something. And then you can always ask after that, or actually you could ask in your dispute letter, say, hey, if you don't correct or delete this, send me the method of verification. In other words, what did you do to investigate? There's not a whole lot they have to give you, but the point is they usually won't give you anything at all, which is, I think, a violation of the law. So what you want to do, Paulette, in my view is what, for our clients, what happens is we want to be super specific about each and every error. Okay. Remember what I said about like, don't shortcut this. Don't try to, and I'm not saying you're doing it, but I'm saying there are people who go, well, it looks like a lot of work. I got to like circle all this stuff, type all this stuff. Can't I just say, I don't recognize the Capital One account? No, don't say that. If it is your account, don't say it, but point out, here are the 127 errors on Capital One. That would be something great to do. And just take the time, point it out. It puts the credit bureaus in a difficult spot only because they put themselves in here. I mean, look at this junk here that they've got, all this missing data. Why do they have May 2021 charged off account and down here May 2021 is current? And again, this is not like I poured over credit reports to find one like, oh, I finally found it. This is the first one I grabbed. I said, you know what, I'm going to grab an Equifax one. It ended up not having a collection account, so I grabbed another one, which we'll look at in a moment. And then I grabbed an Experian one, a TransUnion one. This is just the way the data is. All right, so I would then say, look at the payment history. And an easy way to do this is say, well, what's the date open? Is there anything missing? Now here it's not, because it's February of 21. So that matches up. Sometimes you'll see gaps in here and where they have the little crosshatch or whatever you want to call that, no data available. Well, I'd be circling those. Why do you not have any data available on these following months? Or how come you say the account was open here, but yet for the next 18 months, you have no data? Like, seriously, why do you have no data on this? Okay. And then we start looking at these account details. So there's no high credit here. Now, they said we obviously have a balance, okay? And I think if we come back up here, trying to remember, yeah, they list high credit, okay? So they have places in here for high credit, but yet down here, there's no high credit. So point that out. And keep this in mind, because the counter from the credit bureaus is they want to grab each little error and go, what difference does that make? Well, first of all, it's supposed to be accurate and complete. But there's a difference in saying, well, out of 500 pieces of data, we had one missing piece of data. It still shouldn't be missing, but that's not the case. It will be 100 pieces of missing data. So they just want to go, Judge, this is so meaningless. It doesn't mean anything. Yeah, times 100, right? Times 120 times, however many it is. And that's why we want to identify each and every error and type that into a letter and show that to them in the credit report. Let me go back to our messages here. And let's see, Ryan says May 2021 is all screwed up. Problem is total balance is listed as 675. So let's go back to that. So we've got the balance in May is 675. And then we come down here and we have past due $4,182. Now that seems a little hard. Now, Ryan's a smart guy. I don't make any claim to being smart, but we look at that and go, I don't know how that makes any sense. Now, maybe you have to be a really smart guy to understand how if your balance is $600, you can be behind $4,000. I struggled with that. I suspect Ryan does as well. And so that's something we would point out. Now, I've mentioned this in other webinars, but let me just take a moment to do it here. So look at what's on the screen. It's kind of a box on the screen, right? You're looking at this credit report. There are times when we want to sort of reach off the screen and grab other proof, other data, and bring that in. So identity theft, maybe they have the wrong social security number. So here's our social security card. So we're reaching off the screen to get something. And when that's appropriate, that's wonderful to do. Here's an order from a court saying, I do not owe this debt. Pretty important, right? But we can start off with just looking within the screen, okay? And saying, I'm just looking at your own data, Mr. Equifax, Miss Experian, Mr. TransUnion, just looking at your own data. And what Ryan has pointed out very smartly here is that, look, your own data says I'm $4,000 past due in May, but yet my balance is 675, and in April it was 326, and in June it was 1,700. How in the world am I $4,000, right? And we know the amount paid here is 40. So the point is, when you have all this data that you're not going to, like if you pull your Equifax report from Experian.com, they say, oh, we'll sell you one, and it's cheaper to buy it individually. First of all, you don't have to buy it. Go to annualcreditreport.com. But it's not going to have all this data on here. You have to get the data directly from the source. And so get Equifax from Equifax, Experian from Experian, TransUnion from TransUnion. And then just start looking at all this data, just like Ryan did, and say, hey, this just doesn't look right here. How does that match up with, this amount past due down here? And so that's a very, very good observation. And this is where I say, to do the work. We can't just say, oh, I'm going to look at my credit report for the first time, and, I'm only going to allocate 2 minutes to look through 100 pages. No, it may take you 2 hours, may take you 5 hours, but just study. What you could think about is like each piece of data is like this. You pick it up, you look at it, you turn it over. Hopefully this won't spill. You look at it, you compare it to other pieces of data, and then you say, okay, yeah, there's some discrepancy here. Let me identify that, okay? And I want to give everything to the credit bureau. Again, we'll talk next week about the letter itself. But right now, we're just finding all the errors, all the inconsistencies, all the incomplete information. All right, let me go back to our comment here. Ryan said that's impossible. It can't be past due. Yeah. Secondly, the report says they're past due $4,100 in May, but payment history says they paid on time. So let's go back to that. So, and this is just one example here that Ryan's giving us. This May of 2021, see, it says we're on time. So how in the world, as Ryan points out, are we past due? Just like, it doesn't make any sense, because it doesn't make sense. I mean, it's not just that it doesn't seem like it, it's impossible to make sense because it's absolutely contradictory. All right, let's see here. Paulette said, I gave them very specific listing of all payments I made. Some were made when the credit furnisher said I was late. Credit bureau still did not correct or update. So, Paulette, what I would say on that, and that sort of stuff, we're sort of reaching off screen, right? We're pulling our banking records. Make sure you're not just giving them a list, but you're saying, here's the proof that not only the check was written, that it was cash, but that it was not returned. Here's my full, complete banking statement for each month. See, sometimes people will say, well, I just want to give them like one little slice of it. Well, maybe the next line down says the payment was reversed. Give them the whole report, the whole banking statement. And, sometimes people say, well, John, that would make my letter with the attachments like 100 pages long. So make it as long as it needs to be. Don't say, well, I've only got 2 pages to do this. So just give them all the proof and explain, circle things, draw, highlight stuff, point out, if you will look on May 15th, there was a PNC charge for $800, which matches my account statement from PNC Bank, and you can match all this up. So you kind of want to connect the dots for them. They're supposed to do their own investigation, but when we can help them, that's certainly something that we can do. All right, let's see. JD Lewis says, that I believe is a common thing for the CRAs. I sent detailed letters. They did not fix the errors, have duplicate account reporting, contradicting information, verify both accounts. Yeah, JD. So if you feel like you've done that in a very detailed way and you're not getting good results, if you haven't watched our webinar from last week, you might want to watch that, or just reach out to me. I'll send it to you. I'll probably put it on YouTube here in a couple of days. But it's just, what's the 3-step process when you call the credit bureau? Okay. And I think that'd be helpful for you. And it's amazing what you get from these phone calls. What sometimes the customer service people will tell the truth. Now, I don't think the credit bureaus want them to tell the truth, but they'll tell the truth like, hey, we don't really do anything. All we do is reach out to the furnisher. Whatever they tell us, I mean, we don't even look at any of your stuff other than to pass it along to them. Well, that's pretty much some powerful testimony, right? When you get that. So go check out that webinar or just reach out to me privately and I'll chat with you about that. All right, Paulette says, gave them copies of the bank statements, payments, all the receipts, bulky report. Well, then Paulette, I'd do the same thing. I would just, you may need an hour for each bureau, right? If you got a lot of information, but just start calling them like, hey, Equifax. And let me give you the like 2-minute version. We recommend 3 things. First, you say for each account that you identified errors for, say, tell me what investigation you did for this account, the Capital One account, the Bank of America account, Citibank account. And, you can ask them details. Like in your case, Paulette, you may say, did you look at the information I sent? Did you compare the records, my banking records, with what the furnisher was saying? Did you contact the bank? Did you pick up the phone and call the furniture? What did you do? We're trying to sort of get the universe of what they did in this investigation, which is usually incredibly tiny. Okay. And then the second thing is we say, since you didn't fix this or delete the account, I want you to investigate the account again right now, today. Do the dispute over the phone. And sometimes they'll say, well, you'll have to tell us exactly what's wrong. Well, just pull out your letter and say, I'm happy to read my letter to you. Okay. And sometimes they'll say, well, that'll take a long time. You go, it's okay, I got time. And then just start reading it. And that usually they'll go, okay, we've got your letter. We'll just do the same thing. And then you say, I want my complete full file disclosure. Okay. And that means everything they have on you, which they'll pretend that's your credit report. In my view, it's more than that. So that's what I would recommend. All right. So let's, I think I've got the comments here. So Let's just look at a couple more things and then we will move on to the next report. Notice here the date of last payment. Well, if we made a payment, seems like there should be an amount, right? Kind of hard to make a payment that's blank. It's not much of a payment. Terms frequency unknown. I would be curious, if I'm sitting across the table from Equifax or if I'm writing them a letter, be curious, why don't you know the terms frequency? What is the terms frequency? What is that, first of all? And why do you say it's unknown? Shouldn't you know? If this is a trustworthy data furnisher, shouldn't you know what the terms frequency are? We can look at other stuff here like creditor classification, unknown. What do you mean unknown? You don't know what kind of creditor this is? The date closed. If we go back, and I may have blacked it out. Let me see if I did. Yeah, I did. But it'll say in parentheses, closed. Okay. If it's closed, seems like we ought to have a date closed. Okay. And so you can kind of pick up each piece of data here and look and say, okay, is this missing? Should it be missing? Is it accurate? Is it not accurate? Let's go to another one here. And I pulled this one up just because it's kind of odd. And I'd like you to type this in. So look at the account status and then look at the payment history and what just jumps out at you. There should be several things that jump out, but what's sort of the big thing that jumps out at you is you're like, okay, that doesn't look right. And again, imagine you're sitting across the table from Equifax, or you're on the phone with Equifax, or you're typing Equifax a letter. What would you say to them about this account that's on the screen, looking at the account status and the payment history? And then we'll start looking at some other stuff. You'll notice on this account, it doesn't have those 3 years of like the balance, available credit, scheduled payment, date of last payment, high credit. Yeah, bills. Yeah, so we got Blaine, Bill. See, it says over 120 days past due. That means it's not just 120 days. They're saying it's more than 120 days past due. So we go, okay. Now, again, we're just looking within the credit report itself. We're not reaching off this side of the screen or that side, bringing in any other documents. We're just saying, look at what they have here. Okay, over 120 days late, well, we would expect to see something more than 120. If we look at their little chart, 120, the next thing's 150. But as you guys point out, there's no 120 days late. And there's certainly nothing over 120 days late. Okay. Now it's incomplete. All right. Like, where's December? Now, without even looking at when it opens, we'd go, well, this is odd that we start off 30 days late, right? I mean, you wouldn't think you start off late. So it actually was open here, December 2015. So we're missing that month. January, February, March, April, May, June, July. Then we're missing December. And, now maybe something happened in April that sort of closed this thing out. Okay. So as we look further down, we may be able to figure that out. But just looking at the chart, we go, there's like seriously a lot of stuff missing here. And as you guys point out, it doesn't match this 120 days past due. So if we kind of scroll down to get a feel for what's happening, we go, oh, okay, they're saying it's paid. All right, well, kind of the logical thing is we look at the date of last payment, right? If it's been paid, then there must be a last payment. And look, Equifax knows how to put the amount. They just often don't. And so evidently this thing was paid in April 2017. So I think that's actually correct to do it that way, to not put any kind of negative information there because it was paid during that month. So we go, okay, this is sort of where time stops, but we've got March 2017 going all the way back to December 2015. And then we identify all that missing stuff. Notice here, they have a high credit. Now, again, we would have to sort of reach off the screen because we don't have any other information necessarily to know, was that high credit correct? But at least they have it, right? Give them credit for that. And they said the terms was monthly. We've got They're still confused on the creditor, right? They don't know who the creditor is or what type of classification. Let's look at this date of first delinquency, January 2017. So I always want to compare that with the payment history. Now, if you just take what's listed, this would actually be correct, assuming we brought it current in December, because that would sort of break the chain. Remember, date of first delinquency, first time you went delinquent, you never brought it current. Well, if we brought it current in December of 16, then January 17 would be the date of first delinquency. But if we didn't bring it current here, then August 16 would actually be the date of first delinquency, right? Which means what they put will cause it to stay on our report longer than it should. So again, we want to just look at everything we can in here and just say, all right, does this look correct? Does this look accurate? Is there something contradictory about this? Let me show you just a couple other quick things here. So this is one that says pay as agreed, but look, the payment history, it's only negative. And it's obviously missing stuff. I mean, did we start off 30 days late? Well, certainly we're missing September 2016. We go, oh, wait, we started in March of 2016. Wow, we're missing a lot of months there. Okay. And so this has like high credit, zero balance. So something happened to it. Okay. Not sure what happened to it. All right. So we would just point out this stuff, go, hey, why do you say that, I was 30 days late here. You're missing all the other history. You've got a date of last payment, November 2016, but there's no payment amount there. And so again, that would be some things that we could challenge on that. And I'm trying to remember. Yeah. Okay. So we do have a collection account here. So looking at this collection account, what jumps out at you as either something that's inaccurate or something that's missing here? Look at this collection account. And this is medical, but it actually doesn't make any difference here for our purposes. Just look and see what doesn't look right, what looks missing, what looks wrong to you about this collection account. Let's see, Shannon mentions a lot of times they'll put the account type wrong. Yeah, they certainly can do that. Now on this one, just assume that part is correct, okay, that this actually is medical or healthcare. What do you see on here that's missing, where it looks like there should be some information, but they just don't have any information on this? All right, Frank says it was posted too early. Okay. Yeah, so the 1 year thing is really not coming up quite yet. Okay. And truly for us to know whether an account has been out there for more than a year, we have to know what Bill said, date of first delinquency. So that's not the date that it first went delinquent with the collector. That's when it went delinquent with the doctor, the hospital, whoever. And that's a critical date to know. I don't have it here. It's just completely missing. Where is it? Now there's no last payment. Now maybe we didn't make a payment. Okay. So maybe there has been no payment. I mean, it says the original amount owed was 100. Now we owe 104, which is kind of odd. Looks like they're tacking on some kind of interest or fees or something, which again, that's sort of going off screen, right? We have to go, okay, well, under my law, my state law, or the contract, are they allowed to do that? Maybe they are, maybe they're not. Okay. But we certainly could ask about it and say, I'm really confused. Why did it go up $4? Okay. But where's my date of first delinquency? How do I know how long this is going to stay on my report if you won't tell me when it first went delinquent? I mean, the date assigned is when the collector got it. Well, that doesn't tell me anything. The status date, that means when they updated the status, which is unpaid, was just last month. That doesn't tell me anything. I need to know the date of first delinquency. I don't have it. So that would seem to be kind of an easy thing to dispute and say, hey, Equifax, where's the date of first delinquency? When you got a space for it, you have to know that information in order to credit report. Every credit bureau has to know date of first delinquency of every account that's negative, or else they can't report it, because that tells them how long it will stay on your report. They just don't have that there. So let's look at, and we won't spend as much time on these, but let's just look at, this is an Experian credit report. So in looking at, it says it's paid and closed, and here's the payment history. And a lot of times on these, I like to start kind of at the bottom and then, sort of work my way up and see what's going on. And so let's just focus on this payment history. So what jumps out at you, or what jumps out to you on this from the payment history, where you go, that's either wrong, it's missing, it's contradictory, just not looking anywhere outside this credit report, just actually literally what's on our screen. What jumps out? All right, Blaine says had to go from 0 to 60. And I think Blaine's talking about here in January of 2021 to 60. And so, January is ND, so no data. Now maybe that's 0. And if it was current, then it would be really weird, because last time I checked, I think January only has 31 days. So it'd be kind of hard to get to 60. But they actually have it as no data. Let's see. Tony says January 21, no data, February 60. Yeah, we just don't know what's in January. If we don't know what's in January, we can't know, is it properly marked as 60 days? And Stacy says it's got 60 days twice. So it does have that in November and December. Now, I will say this, that's possible. So imagine I'm 2 months behind and my monthly payment's $100. And so then I pay $100. Well, the next month, I'm still 60 days behind, right? Because it's now another month. I would need to sort of double up here to actually get this thing paid off. And so, you can stay, like an easier example is if I'm 30 days late on my Discover card and I'm supposed to pay $100. I don't pay it in January. So February, they mark me as 30 days late. I pay $100. Well, then they're going to keep marking me 30 days late until I make up that missing payment. So it can stay as 60, but that means we're making some payments. Okay. And not to spoil this, but we come back and we go, well, wait a minute, there's no recent payment. But I must have been making some payments, because as Stacy pointed out, why is it saying 60 days? And maybe January was 60 days. So that would be even more payments there. Let's see, payment history guide incorrect. Yeah, very, very good, Frank. So look at this payment history guide. You'll find this about maybe 20% of the time. It's not real common, but it's worth looking for. So let's just start down here. 30 days past due as of October 2020. So we're sort of very methodical. We're not rushing. We just take a look, go, all right, October of 2020, 30, October 2020, 30. Okay. All right, now 60 days past due for November 2020. Yeah, that's right. To January. So that would include December. Yeah. Oh, January 21. This says no data up here in the payment history, but the payment history guide said it's 60 days. Well, which one is it? I've sort of told this story before. It's from the old movie Raising Arizona, when the guy breaks into the bank and he yells, he's got a shotgun and he yells, everybody freeze, everybody on the ground. And nobody does anything. And this old guy is sitting there with overalls on and says, well, which one is it, young fella? Should I freeze? I can't get on the ground. Should I get on the ground? I'd be in motion. And that's the point here. Which one is it? Is it no data, or is it 60 days? Can't be both, right? You can't be both. So if they truly have the data for January, then they need to list it there. And if they don't have it there, they can't be saying we're 60 days past due. All right, so very good, very good. So then we kind of make our way back up and we say, oh, well, let's talk about this. There's a whole bunch of no data, right? I mean, almost all of 21, they're like, we have no idea what happened. We have absolutely no data whatsoever. Seems like a problem when I can dispute incomplete information. And then in 2022, they have no data. Finally, they close it in May. What happened in May? Well, we don't know. We come up here and it says paid closed. All right, so evidently we paid it and it was updated in May. Well, what was a recent payment? Well, why would they have the little, like, I got no idea mark, right? There should be a dollar amount there. What was it? We must have paid it because you say we paid it. And why are you missing all this data? So there's other things that we can look for on Experian, but the point is not to necessarily go in and say, all right, here's the 27 items to look for in each report. You'll really like understand this a lot better if you just sort of spend time with this and look through it and just, again, sort of pick up each piece of data and look at it and say, is that right? Does that make sense? And you'll find things, that like, Blaine and Bill and Frank and Ryan on the last one, mentioned, hey, there are these contradictions or there are these items that are missing here. And then you'll start to see those patterns over and over. See, Ryan says the highest balance says 0. That can't be correct. If the original balance was 525, highest balance couldn't be 0. Yeah, so look at this. Highest balance, 0. Original balance, 525. So we know at least it was 525, as Ryan's pointing out. So how is it that the highest balance was 0? It just makes no sense. Now, you would think the Bureau would have stuff that would sort of like cross-reference, kind of like if you're using TurboTax and you say, I don't know, I have 3 kids and it says enter the information and you try to skip that. It's like, no, you said you have 3 kids, In other words, it's going to sort of point out where there are contradictory things. Obviously, the credit bureaus are not burdened with such a computer system here. Let's see, Bill said, does creditors send it to them or do they request the info? So the creditors send the information usually every month. And then when there's an investigation, we have this, just think of it as a communication portal, eOscar. And you've got the credit bureau on one end, and they send a form called an ACDV, Automated Consumer Dispute Verification Form, that says, hey, here's this one account. They would send one for each account you dispute, but here's this one account. We'll identify it. Here's what the consumer's saying, what's, all the things that are wrong. Usually, though, they'll just say, see the attached letter. And that goes to the furnisher, the data furnisher, the creditor. They're supposed to investigate and then send back to the bureau. Here's the corrected information. Here's the updated information. Or, hey, we think you ought to delete this. And then the credit bureau is supposed to do their own investigation and look at what the furnisher says and then make a decision on what to do. And so, all right, let's look now at TransUnion. And so this is an account, and let me just show you all the trended data. It's a lot of pages, so it's sort of hard in this webinar to say, well, let's look at everything all at once. So let's just kind of look at this in sections. So what do you see in this? What's on the screen? What just looks like to you doesn't make any sense that's on the screen. So just look at each field and say, okay, I see what they're saying. Does that make sense? So Shannon says closed account would normally have a payment history. Well, so you can have a closed account and you're still going to have your payment history, just historically what happened. Okay, so I don't think that's going to be it. Oh, and I say I missed a comment from Derek. We can cross-reference for them. I think he's talking about the errors on reports. Yeah, so you certainly can get help in doing this, but I would suggest if you have an interest in really making sure your report is disputed properly, like spend the time, go through this yourself, find those errors, or at least the things that you have a question about. And you can always ask the credit bureaus. And you'll see in the template letter, if you want to do it like we do it, we ask a lot of questions. Hey, how can you have this with this? And maybe there's a good answer for it, or maybe there's not a good answer for it. Yeah, so Tony points out, look at the payment. So we got last payment made, September 3rd, 2019. Now, again, we're not reaching off the edge of the screen, right? We're just taking what they give us here. Okay. And then payment received, as Tony says, zero. Frank says no actual payment. That makes no sense. How can you pay zero? If I write you a check and mail it to you and it's for $0, can I legitimately say, I paid Frank last week? They're like, really? I'm like, oh yeah, send him a check for zero. Makes no sense. Okay. It's just bad data that they have. All right. So there's a couple other things we can look at here. This high balance is telling us what was your high balance during different time periods. Now, in this particular one, they all stay the same. There's a reason why they're kind of split up. Okay. And we'll see that when we look in here. But just know that you can compare that. Like, let's say that it said 4281 for April 2019, but that had $2,000. You go, well, wait a minute. That's not right. Okay. It's just flat out wrong. Remember, we're looking for things that are incomplete or inaccurate. Credit limit. It says we have a zero credit limit from August 2020 to September 21. Kind of odd, okay, unless it was charged off. But then a 3404 credit limit, which is sort of a really weird credit limit, okay? And then that again. So we could look at that. They don't give us the date of first delinquency. Now, if they have all their data in the payment history, then sometimes we can figure out what would be the date of first delinquency. But we're going to see their data is so poor in the payment history, there's no reason we would rely on that. So we want the actual date of first delinquency. Instead, they give us this estimate like, I don't know, if the stars and moon align and there's no asteroid coming, then maybe, possibly, who knows, it'll come off in July 26, maybe. That's not what we're asking for. We want to know the date of first delinquency. So if we start looking at this payment history, to just look at these first few months in 2019 that are reporting, what jumps out at you about the data here? Yeah, Tony said incomplete. I mean, it's just missing. Now we've got a rating, right? We got some ratings down here. We have some remarks, which here's a little tip. These remarks make no sense. If you go back and look at the glossary, that stands for profit loss write-off. Really? Profit loss write-off the very first month? So there's just a bunch of incomplete things here. Now, look, they have the fields, the spaces for the data. They don't have the data. Okay. So if we were talking to TransUnion across the table or over the phone or by letter, it's all the same. We go, where's the data for April, May, June, July, August, September 2019? The balance, the past due, the amount paid, some of these, the remarks. Why do you have these weird remarks in here? What's going on? All right. And then these next months we see same thing. Now, the rating is showing that it's getting worse and that it goes to a charge off. Okay. And then we finally start getting like the fields actually completed here, right? August, September. We think, okay, fine. The TransUnion is finally doing the right thing here. So we rock along. And according to this, remember, we're not reaching off the screen right now. Now, obviously, if this is for you, you have the bank statements proving that you made payments these months. Well, then you sort of reach off screen, you get that outside proof, you attach it, you explain it to them. But even if you don't have that, we just look at this, we say, okay, no payments are being made. And then we rock along and, oh, that's weird, November 2021. So look at that. No balance, no past due, no amount paid, no remarks, no rating. There's a little glossary up top. I didn't include it, but NR stands for not reported. And so we go, that's weird that there's this break here. Now, maybe this will help us make sense of if we go back to right here. Remember the high balance? Remember we said it's kind of odd. It's the same dollar amount, but they have these breaks to October 2021, then December. Why don't they have it for November? Oh, because they don't have any information. They have no earthly idea what happened in November. Zero, none. They're like, we got nothing. Okay. Well, probably if we keep looking, we'll see June of 22 is probably missing as well. All right. So let's see here. Let's see. Derek says 2019 rating 120, 120 charge off. Yeah. So let's talk about that. So you see 120 repeated with no amount paid. TransUnion's argument would be we actually only go up to 120. We don't actually use typically 150, 180. I'm not saying it's a great argument, but that would be their response to it. And that would explain why it sort of looks like it's staying the same, but there's no payment. But look, you could certainly raise it. Like, why do you have three 120s but no payment? It would seem like I would be making a payment. So again, we've got this, what was it, November 21. It's just missing the data. So we go along. Oh, wait, look, there's June. We're missing the data. Now that makes sense up top, right? Where there was that kind of break in the credit history or the high balance, the credit limit, because they're like, we have nothing for June 2022. So think about that. They're missing the balance, the past due, amount paid. Now, somehow they know the remarks for that month, even though they have no data. They have no idea. We may have paid it off that month. They're like, we have no idea. But we're pretty confident it was a profit loss write off. Might be something you question them about. And so this is, again, not to go over every detail, every error of every credit report, but to say, just start looking at this data and just take a moment. And that's why it's so helpful to have a work copy, whether that's, on a screen, whether that's on a tablet, whether you print it out, okay, where you can look at this and say, remember what Ryan pointed out. I think it was with Equifax, the first Equifax one, where it had a balance of like, what was it, 600 and a past due the same month of 4,800. It's like, wait a minute. Now, see, you kind of need that laid out where you can look at different pages and you go, wait a minute, let me circle this, draw an arrow, you get to the bottom of the page, like just keep drawing the line, go to the next page. And then you type that out to them like, hey, how can I have a balance of $600 and whatever that was, May 2021, but yet I'm $4,800 past due? Like, please explain this to me, Equifax, because to me, it makes no sense. Will you explain this to me? Like, don't feel like it has to be some formal language. You can just do it very conversationally. Just ask them questions. They're never going to answer your questions, but you've given them the chance. And if they don't answer your questions, they don't fix it, they don't delete it, and then you end up suing, the judge is going to be more likely to look favorably on you when you have this very detailed letter. You've explained exactly what's wrong. You've asked these questions, and then, the judge is reading the letter. Goes, that's a pretty good question, Equifax. And the lawyer goes, yes, Your Honor. Explain to me how $600 balance, but yet you're $4,800 past due. Well, Your Honor, you see, we take in a lot of data and we have a 99% accuracy rate and none of this really matters. And judge is like, I'm sorry, answer my question. Okay. So the more detail we can put into these letters, then the higher the obligation is on the bureaus. Now they should be able to figure all that sort of inherently contradictory stuff themselves, but let's help them. Okay. So that they'll either do the right thing, fix it, delete it, or if they don't, then we sue them and they'll be in a bad position and we'll be in a good position. All right, let's see. Tony says, amount paid $80, balance stays the same. Okay, yeah. So let's look at this. So, and where does that start, Tony? We have it, I think it just starts here, December 21. So let's count these. We got one in December, January, February, March, April, May, who knows about June, July, August, September, October, November, December. So what is that, 12 payments of $80? And our balance didn't move. The past due didn't move. Okay. And if we back up here, and Tony will remember this, payment received 0. It's like, well, that's odd because you tell me I made 12 payments of $80, but yet my balance doesn't move and doesn't even get reflected on here. Okay. And you say here, the last payment was September 2019. Well, that's odd because that's right here. But then we know there are a bunch of payments after that. So again, just think in terms of questions are so powerful. Just type this out. And I'll be honest, it drives me crazy when I hear people that, supposedly are experts are really not. They don't know what they're doing, but they go, oh, make sure your letter's not over 1 page long, or no dispute letter ever needs to exceed 2 pages. Again, I hear these people and they sound very impressive, and they certainly want you to believe they know what they're talking about. They don't, or they do, and they're purposely telling you something that's untrue. Maybe they're selling a product, a service, whatever they're selling. But your letter needs to be as long as it needs to be. Okay. I had some clients send out some 60-page letters, not 60-page type, but attachments, here's pages from the credit reports. Look, if you are doing this on a computer, you generally can, from your PDF viewer, sort of print that 1 page or a section, like a snippet, to an image, and then drop the image into a Word document. So when you're talking about, the Capital One account, you can say, and here's exactly what I mean, and drop it in there. I still would put it as an attachment or an enclosure to your letter, okay? But you can sort of embed it actually inside the Word document, all right? And so just think, like, who cares how long it is, right? If we've got, 4 accounts that are negative and they each have 50 errors in them, and this is hurting us because those shouldn't be on our credit report, what do we care if we take 30 pages instead of 5 pages? Like, take as many pages as you need. Give them all this information, because here's what the credit bureaus love to do when you sue them. And I say this having sued them for, decades now. They'll say, well, if you had only done blank, we would have fixed it. Now, that blank varies, right? They'll say, if you'd only include pages of our credit report, because apparently we're incapable of looking at our own credit report that we produce on. Or they'll say, well, if you only include the court documents, say you were sued by a debt collector, you won your case, you include the court document, or you don't include them. They go, if you'd only include them. Now, if you include them, they go, oh, we presume those were forgeries. Well, did you call the court? Well, no, we can't do that. Our people are overseas. They don't have access to a phone. We took their deposition one time. I may have told you this story. And we said, well, because they said we thought the court documents were forged. Now, all this is made up by the lawyers after the fact once you sue them, okay? But this is the fiction that they go through. They go, well, we didn't fix it because we thought the court documents were forged. We said, did you call the court? No. Did you call the collection lawyer? No. Did you call the client to ask them? No. Well, did you look online at the online court system? No. And so then we started asking questions like, do the people that investigate, do they have a computer? Well, no, they have a terminal. Well, do they have internet access? No. Can they look anything up to do research online? No. Do they have a telephone? No. Are they allowed to make any type of call to research, to investigate? No. Can they do any investigation at all? No. And finally, and I'm sure they thought it was kind of being a smart aleck, but I thought it was pretty good. Say, do they even have a pencil? Do you allow your people to have even a pencil and a piece of scrap paper to make notes to go, this is kind of weird. Maybe we need to invest. Oh, no, they don't have anything. All they can do is read the letter and turn it into a 2-digit code and press a button, and that's it. That's the sum total of our investigation. Well, see, if we send them 50 pages of stuff and they choose to have somebody that can't read English to investigate it, that's on them. If they choose to have somebody that's not allowed to make a phone call, to do internet research, to do any investigation, that's on them. And they will have to answer for that. All right. So I think we've covered this pretty well here. So if you guys have any final questions, we'll go over those. But otherwise, we'll be back next Thursday, and we will cover okay, now that we've got our real credit reports, we've identified the errors. How do we put this in a letter? How do we get that letter to the credit bureaus? What do we do when they reject the letter, when they say, oh, this is suspicious, we're not going to investigate it? What do we do when we get results of investigation back? What if they haven't fixed it, deleted it? Do we do that phone dispute? Do we pull credit reports again? What do we do? And like I said, there will be other sessions, and you guys will get all the links to those. What I didn't want to do is take 8 hours and go, okay, let's spend 2 hours on identity theft and mixed merge files and after a bankruptcy and this type of error and that type of error, and then get to writing the letter. So I want to just sort of take this junk data here where we look at it and go, this stuff just doesn't make any sense. Or you understand the concept, you can reach outside and bring in information. But just gather the proof that this stuff is wrong. We'll write the letter next week. We'll send that off and then see where we go from there. All right. Let's see. Paulette, can you provide referrals? A consumer attorney, Southern California. So I am from California, but I'm not licensed there. And Paulette, if you'll just email me and let me know what your situation is. And there are lawyers I work with in California, Georgia, Tennessee, and I think Blaine may be on here. Blaine is with me at my firm, and we do a lot of this stuff together in Tennessee. There's some lawyers in Florida that I work with. So, and then there are lawyers in other states that I may know. So just reach out to me. But here's what I would say, and this is true of any lawyer that you're reaching out to. Let me give you kind of two extremes. One extreme, we get this like one paragraph with literally no punctuation. It's like a giant sentence, 5,000 words, and it's just going all over the world. Okay. And there's like 373 PDFs attached to it. And I'm reading this thing, and like, if I can't figure out in the first 10 seconds what's going on, I got a whole stack of work to do. Okay. And so I would make it very clear, like, hey, I think, these credit bureaus have violated the Fair Credit Reporting Act because I've disputed the actual errors and they've refused to investigate. Okay, now you got my attention. So then I want to know, well, when did you dispute? Because some people go, I disputed back in 2010. Well, it's a little late for us to do anything about that. And, usually what I like to see are the dispute letters and the results of investigation, or at least say I have that available. And again, some people will go, well, I basically took 500 pages, shuffled them all together, mixed them up, scanned them as one document. You go through it all, John, and figure it out. I don't have time to do that. Make it organized. Okay. Here's my letter. Here's the proof it was delivered. Here are the results of investigation. Here's the new credit report. And then identify what's wrong. Like, here's the issue. Again, people will email me stuff, and it's a 170-page Equifax report, and they're like, I think if you'll carefully review my report, you'll see there are some errors in there, and I probably disputed them. I'm not doing it. So, and I don't think any lawyer that does this. There aren't many of us that do this around the nation. So you really need to make it clear, and I'm not fussing at you, Paula. I'm just saying this is a good way to approach things, is just be very organized and say, look, I've got everything scanned in. I can share a Google Drive, Dropbox, OneDrive, whatever. But, here's the summary of what's wrong. And then I can look at that and say, I think there's something we can do with that. Hey, I know a lawyer in your state, or, depending on which company it is, sometimes we can sue. Like if we're suing Equifax, we can always sue them in Georgia, right? Because that's where they're located. We can sue Experian in California. We can sue TransUnion typically in like Philadelphia or Chicago. Wouldn't necessarily recommend at least Chicago, but California could be a good place for Experian. And so just if you guys have questions, feel free to reach out to me. But just try to make it as organized as possible, because again, this is, I probably a better way of saying it than this, but I've got my own clients, I've got lawsuits to file, lawsuits that have been filed. We're fighting with the credit bureaus. And if I get something that like, I can't figure out what the point of it is, where it's like paragraph after paragraph. I'm like, what's the issue? And I get these very vague things like, my consumer protection rights have been violated and I want to know how much you'll sue for. I have no idea what that is. It's like going to a doctor and saying, I have a medical problem. What surgery will you do? And the heart surgeon's like, is it related to your heart or do you have a broken foot? Like, I don't know. You got to tell me, right? And so that's just a good way if you want to get help. Just make it very organized, nice summary, clear exactly what's happened. And look, a lot of times people come to us, we look at what they did and we say, you know what, we need to do another dispute, maybe tweak the language a little bit. That's totally fine. Okay. But just make it organized if possible there. All right. So let me see here. We'll wrap up with these comments. Ryan says, got an email from attorney for Capital One, 1681 S2B. So S2B is when the credit bureau notifies the furnisher, like Capital One, says, hey, Ryan has disputed this and Capital One doesn't do a proper investigation. We can sue for that. There's another part called 1681 S2A we cannot sue for. And so I know it's wrong. Can I send you by email, get your advice, how to proceed? Yeah. Yeah. So send that to me, Ryan. And if you don't mind, just, like PDF their email and, the dispute letter, the complaint or whatever, I'll be glad to take a look at that. And let's see, Shannon and Stacy and Paulette and Gerard. So, hey, and Blaine, Bruno asked, are late payments illegal? No, they're not illegal. Somebody horribly misread the FCRA, or they did intentionally. And look, I can appreciate, that we can say outrageous stuff and, our videos can go viral and that type of stuff. But, there's this thing out there. It's like, no late payments are legal unless you give permission. If we just sort of think about it, it's absurd, right? Because nobody would give permission and there'd be nothing negative on credit reports and credit reports would be basically worthless. So late payments are legal if the account is accurate, all the information is accurate, all the information is complete. So just kind of go through what we talked about today, look at your own reports. What I would say for those of you that maybe are starting from scratch, or if you've got, credit monitoring or something, like go to annualcreditreport.com. You can also go to just Google Clarity Services and pull those real reports, save them to PDF, make a copy and start working off that working copy and just go through and say, I'm kind of confused about this, or I'm not sure about that, or let's revisit this. And, that sort of stuff, I'm much more inclined to respond to. Somebody says, hey, here's what I'm looking at, am I on the right track here? Versus somebody that says, here's 27 PDFs. I want you to look through everything and, tell me in an hour, exactly how much I can sue for. And I'm like, you haven't even done any disputes, So the point of this is to empower you guys so that you can do this on your own. Now, you may want to get with a lawyer. You may want to get with a credit repair place to do the disputes. Certainly, if you're going to sue, get with a lawyer. You're just like, it's like going to a gunfight with, leaving your gun at home and taking a knife. Like, why would you go to this type of case without a lawyer? It makes no sense. But in terms of disputing, you can get with a lawyer like my firm, for the states that we help people with. You can get with a credit repair place, but really I'd like you to be able to do it on your own. And then even if you get help, you can make sure the help you're getting is actually correct and good. Let's see, Anthony asked about the Clarity website. I think, yeah, there we go. And let me just show you guys both of these websites here. Give me just one moment. Apparently I'm confusing myself with two screens here. Okay, so let's just look at these and then we'll wrap it up with this. So let me share my screen. Okay, so So this is annualcreditreport.com. Come here, click the red button. You'll answer security questions. Can kind of be annoying, but it's to protect you. Okay. Make sure your neighbor's not getting your credit report. And then Clarity is consumers.clarityservices.com. You can get your score. I don't ever mess with that. I mean, you can get it, okay, but the Clarity reports what you want. You fill out this information, and sometimes there'll be an error. Maybe you're using a different email address, or it's got an old physical address, and the report may be a little bit outdated. And so you might have to call, you might have to write them a letter, but try to get it online. I mean, I'd say 75% of our clients are able to pull their Clarity report online. And, just kind of look at it. It does have some accounts, potentially, maybe half of our clients have accounts on there. The other half don't. What I really want you to look at is like the names, date of birth, email addresses. It is pretty common to have like a 40-year-old man in Alabama, and then there's like a 68-year-old woman in Wyoming. And it's not like the names are James and Jamie, right? It's like Ralph and Susan. Totally different last name, totally different date of birth. Email addresses are wildly different. Banking account information is wildly different. So look for that. If you have that, let me know and I'll walk you through it. Okay. And eventually we'll cover that in a webinar, but just kind of start the process of looking at Clarity. But if you had to choose, like get the big three first and then get Clarity. Okay. Let's see here. Bruno, do I waive my rights when disputing online? So first of all, there is no waiving of rights by doing stuff online. You can agree to certain products from the credit bureaus that then you've agreed to arbitrate. Now, you still haven't waived your rights to sue. You just have to go through arbitration. And there's actually a strategy, we may or may not cover it, where we may have a case where we say, we want to arbitrate this. So we go sign up for a service, agree to arbitration, and then we file arbitration against credit bureaus. Now, they don't like that because it's really designed to hurt you. And they're like, wait a minute, you can't use this against us. Actually, we can. And so, but just disputing online doesn't. But I will tell you this, the problem with disputing online is it's very, very hard to go through the level of detail we went through. They give you very limited space. You can try to type it all up, put in like a PDF and upload it. Half the time, the attachments will not be accepted. And so to me, it's just easier to do it by letter and then to phone, just to call in the bureau. Even it takes you an hour, and most of the time it's like 15 minutes. But then you go over the information again. Let's see, Frank says, you can pull your official TransUnion report from TU's website once every 24 hours. Do something similar with Experian's website. Need to just click into Experian's Dispute Center link, forces an update to your Experian report. You can back out of the dispute view, print your Experian report as normal view. Okay. Frank, if you don't mind, send me either an email. If you don't mind, yeah, send me an email. But if for some reason that doesn't work, just the next time we're on this, if you could give the link to TransUnion to be able to pull that directly, and then the Experian as well. So I think I'm familiar with what you're doing with Experian. I'll be honest, I have not seen that with TransUnion. So I'm very, very curious what you've discovered there. Because sometimes we do have problems through annualcreditreport.com getting TransUnion. So it'd be nice to have sort of a backup approach there. So either shoot that to me in an email or, so just you can do John, John, at wattsherring.com. So let me give you a couple here. And you can also do, these all go to the same place. So John at Watts Herring or John G. Watts at gmail.com, or just wherever you got the link to this webinar, just reply back. And that'll be great. So thank you for doing that. See, Bill, they removed it when I disputed online. 80-year-old lady's phone number on Experian. Experian will correct some personal information. Others they're sort of obsessed with. Like for some reason they decide that's the hill they're going to die on. That like you have 5 different social security numbers. And so they get real weird about that. But let me just go back to the online dispute. If you do an online dispute, and again, it's not my favorite way, but if you're going to do it this way. So just like we have the screen up, right? Well, let me go back to that. So we'll just go, so like imagine I was logging into Equifax Dispute Center. Well, do a Zoom, or if you have Gmail, just do a Google Meet and share your screen and record it. You don't have to do a Zoom or a Google Meet with anybody, right? You can just do it with yourself. Record your screen so that there's no doubt about what you said. I can't tell you how many times a client will say, John, I promise you I uploaded that document. And Equifax says, we didn't get it. Did your guy take a screenshot of it? Well, see, even if you take a screenshot, that's not proof. Get the video, get the screen capture. Okay, just do it like a video. And so you're typing stuff in here and it shows, and you attach or upload a document. It says upload completed. And then when they go, we never got any documents, you're like, well, look at, 5 minutes and 14 seconds into the video, it says you got it. And then they go, oh yeah, we did. Sorry about that. Just understand, they, of course, would be deeply offended. I believe, my opinion, these credit bureaus will lie about anything. And only when we can prove they're lying do they go, oh, well, I guess we better not lie about that. So have the proof. So record it. Make sure you're organized going into it so you don't get like timed out. Have all your documents you want to attach. So basically you're doing like copy paste, and then you're uploading documents that prove whatever it is that you need to prove. And I still like the letter better, but if you're going to do online, record it. Okay, guys. So you guys have a fantastic rest of your week, a nice weekend, and I will see you all next Thursday. Okay, have a good one. Bye-bye.